without
I've got you.
bitterness,
We're
about
almost
how
there.
success meant
Don't stop,
nothing
they're getting
if it
closer.
required
I
stepping
won't. Hold
over
on.
someone in noon. Answers that stood in stark contrast to the polished, hollow confidence she was used to hearing in boardrooms. The first twist came when Lily revealed that her father, Richard Harrington, had personally ordered the interview cut off that day, citing efficiency, a decision she quietly opposed. And when Ethan expressed no anger, only sadness that systems punished compassion, she realized he was exactly the kind of leader the company lacked. But the second twist cut deeper when Richard Harrington himself summoned Ethan days later, offering a lucrative position with one condition: Ethan would publicly apologize for causing a security disruption that delayed operations, a corporate narrative designed to justify the company's actions. And in that moment, Ethan understood the true cost of opportunity, refusing politely but firmly, saying he wouldn't apologize for helping someone who was hurt, even if it meant losing his chance forever. A decision that stunned Richard and enraged several executives who saw Ethan as disposable. And as he walked out once more, Lily followed, torn between loyalty and truth, finally choosing the latter by resigning on the spot, igniting internal chaos and a media firestorm when news leaked that the CEO's daughter had quit over ethical disagreements. What followed was a cascade no one anticipated. Shareholders demanded transparency. Internal emails surfaced revealing years of cutthroat practices, and Richard Harrington, facing pressure, stepped down temporarily, during which Lily launched a startup focused on ethical consulting and sustainable strategy, asking Ethan to join her not as an employee, but as a partner. A proposal that terrified him more than unemployment ever had. Yet he accepted, driven by the belief that maybe losing that first job was the best thing that ever happened to him. Their company struggled at first, mocked by industry giants, until a major client, ironically a former Harrington subsidiary, collapsed under scandal and turned to Lily and Ethan for help rebuilding trust. A moment that felt like poetic justice. And as their reputation grew, so did their bond, though both resisted acknowledging it, focused instead on proving that success didn't require sacrificing humanity, until another twist surfaced when Richard Harrington sought a meeting, humbled, admitting he'd lost sight of the values that built his empire, asking not for forgiveness, but for guidance. And Ethan, remembering the guard who had once dismissed Lily, realized cycles only break when someone chooses grace over revenge. The final reveal came years later at a commencement ceremony where Ethan was invited to speak, standing before thousands of graduates as Lily watched from the front row, now CEO of a reformed Harrington Global after buying back controlling interests through ethical investors. And as Ethan told the story of the day he lost a job for helping a stranger, he ended with the truth that stunned the audience into silence, that success isn't about being on time to the right room, but about showing up for people when it matters, because you never know who they are, what they carry, or how that single choice will echo through your life. And as the crowd rose in applause, Lily met his eyes with a smile that said everything. The girl he helped, now the woman who changed his future. The job he lost, the doorway to a purpose far greater. Proving that sometimes the moment that breaks you is the one that secretly builds everything you were meant to become. Story. Single long paragraph. Ethan Carter had rehearsed the interview answers so many times that the words echoed in his head like a second heartbeat as he stood in the lobby of Harrington Global, a glass and steel monument to power and money in downtown Chicago. His suit borrowed, his shoes polished the night before with nervous care, his phone buzzing with a final good luck text from his mother who had worked double shifts for years so he could even dream of standing there. And just as the elevator doors slid open and he stepped forward, destiny intervened in the form of a quiet cry near the revolving doors. A sound so fragile it cut through the hum of ambition and marble floors. And when he turned, he saw a young woman kneeling beside a fallen bike, her hands shaking as she tried to gather papers scattered across the floor while a security guard barked at her to move aside. Because this isn't a shelter. And Ethan hesitated only a second before kneeling down, helping her collect the documents, offering his water bottle when he noticed her pale face, ignoring the guard's warning that loitering wasn't allowed, unaware that upstairs a panel of executives was already reviewing his resume, and that single act of kindness cost him everything, or so it seemed, because when he finally reached the interview floor 10 minutes late, flustered and apologetic, the receptionist barely looked up before telling him the position had been filled, that punctuality was non-negotiable, and that perhaps next time he should prioritize his career. A sentence that landed like a punch to the chest, and Ethan walked out of the building numb, replaying the moment over and over, wondering how doing the right thing could feel so wrong, while the young woman he helped watched him leave through the glass doors with an expression he couldn't read, clutching the papers he had saved as if they were something priceless. Over the next few weeks, reality hit hard as rejection emails stacked up, his savings evaporated, and his confidence thinned, forcing him to take a temporary job delivering packages, a humbling grind that made him question whether integrity had any place in a world ruled by deadlines and profit margins. And yet every night he remembered her eyes, sharp, intelligent, grateful, and oddly sad, without knowing why they haunted him, until one rainy afternoon his delivery route brought him back to Harrington Global, where a different security guard waved him through with unexpected respect, escorting him to the executive floor despite Ethan's protest that he was just a courier. And when the elevator doors opened, the same young woman stepped out, no longer in worn jeans and panic, but in a tailored suit that radiated authority, her posture transformed, her presence commanding the room into silence. And before Ethan could process the shock, she smiled and said his name like it mattered, introducing herself as Lily Harrington, Chief Strategy Officer and daughter of the CEO, revealing that the papers he helped her save were confidential acquisition documents she had dropped while fleeing the building that day after overhearing executives plotting to undermine her proposal, a betrayal that had shaken her faith in the company she was born into, and that his kindness had not only saved her work but reminded her of the values her father once taught her before power complicated everything. What Ethan didn't know was that Lily had watched the interview footage later, furious when she saw him dismissed without consideration, and she had orchestrated a quiet investigation into his background, discovering his academic excellence, his volunteer work, the sacrifices he'd made, and the way he'd chosen empathy over ambition without hesitation, a rarity in a culture that rewarded the opposite. And yet instead of immediately offering him a job, she tested him, inviting him to coffee under the pretense of thanking him, asking subtle questions about ethics, pressure, and failure, watching closely as he spoke honestly about disappointment without bitterness, about how success meant nothing if it required stepping over someone in need, answers that stood in stark contrast